Welcome back to the Alt. Thank you for joining me again today. I am your host, Shapirian. Sort of jazzed to be back to talk about football after this NFL Week 10 Sunday. That's only because of my personal reasons. It was a really good week of football. If you just look at the box scores, top to bottom, like one score game, two-score game, okay? The Dallas Cowboys, one-score game. That's kind of the week it was. And, that's the only Cowboys mention you're going to get in this episode. I don't think we have time to get to them in this one. I don't know if there's ever going to be time to get to them in this one, because it's going to be a different kind of episode in general. I'm excited to start talking about it with you. So let's get right into it. Before we do me a favor, check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please hit that little button. We just passed 100 subs, and I'm hoping it doesn't take as long to get from 100 to 200 as it did from 0 to 100. It was quite the push, and thank you to all the people who listened, by the way. I made a little push there at the end, and it did have a little spike. I seriously appreciate it. So if you're watching right now and you would consider just minimizing it, clicking the little sub button, I'd appreciate it. Let's get right into the football. I'm branding this particular episode of The Alt as we go up today, Monday, November 11th, 2024, as the defense episode of The Alt. I'm talking about three teams in particular who have just blown me away with their defensive play and have me reevaluating overall the importance of it in the NFL landscape that seems so heavily dominated by quarterback talk, offense talk, superstar receivers, and things of that nature. Defense, God, it is important. Trust me, I completely understand. Defense is important. It matters. You need it to be a successful football team. We're going to focus on it today in these three segments of the show revolving around three different teams. Let's start now. We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, God, he's talking about the Chiefs. Click off. No, guys, come on. Listen. We're talking about the Chiefs' defense more than anything today. The Chiefs' defense strikes again. And I think it has to, at this point, be noted, like, are they the best defense in the NFL? After today, I've said for weeks, I'm like, Pittsburgh Chiefs 1-2. And I had Pittsburgh number 1. We're going to talk about them next. Don't worry, Pittsburgh fans. I'm not dissing you. I had them number 1, and it's like, I don't know that I can keep denying that the Chiefs might have the best defense in the NFL. Yes, we're 6 days removed from a game where a very, even minus Evans and Godwin, high-powered Bucs offense took them to overtime. They won in overtime, didn't they? Are you not convinced that had the Bucs won the toss, that they still wouldn't have won in overtime? Come on. Now, yes, Denver's defense is very meh. I get it. But bro, to win this game in that fashion is just absolutely otherworldly. You held them to 0 second-half points, 2 touchdowns in the second quarter is all the scoring they did all game. And this was a slog of a game. It really was. It was a slog of a game to get through. And I think Chiefs and Broncos fans have a shorter life expectancy as a result of it, because it was just like, maybe this is the drive that we're going to break through. No. No dice. Whatever. I hate to beat a dead horse. And I do. I really do. But I'm going to. Being able to win these kinds of games is just what separates the Kansas City Chiefs from the rest of the league. And it's not just like, they're capable of it. Okay, lots of teams are capable of winning these low-scoring games. It's the fact that if I tell you the Kansas City Chiefs are getting involved in a low-scoring game, you expect them to win, and I didn't even tell you who their opponent is. It doesn't matter, right? You look at it and it carried them through the playoffs last year, although, the Bills game wasn't low-scoring, I guess. Not really fair. But this defense doesn't get enough credit. I've said it since day 1 of this channel, a few months back, okay? This defense doesn't get enough credit. I'm giving them credit today, as I have all season, and saying I might right now have them number 1 at a defensive power ranking. I think statistically, I don't know what the stats I'll say. I know, passing defense, rushing defense, that's typically what people look at. They're like, number 1 defense. Okay. I take this Chiefs defense over anybody today, even over Pittsburgh, who I'd probably have number 2. And I don't know that I'm saying that for a lot of other championship teams, the year after they won a Super Bowl. I don't know that I am. And now, after the Lions-Texans, they're probably number one in the overall power rankings too, right? They have to be. To now be 2 games ahead of the rest of the league and just continuously smothering teams to impose their will, to find a way to win. I don't know. Listen, we don't get a ton right on this show. We're batting probably 50% on all the guesses we've made in total. I said after week 2. I thought it was week 3. It was week 2. I went back and checked this week. Week 2! After they beat the Bengals by 1 point at home, I said the Chiefs are going to start 9-0, going into a huge matchup against the Bills. And here we are. They're 9-0 going into a huge matchup against the Bills. And this is not, listen, this is not me saying, well, I think the Bills are going to win this one and end it. I'm not saying that. We'll cover that later this week if we decide to talk about that. I just was predicting that. They're going to be undefeated going into that Bills game, and then we'll see. The Bills have been able to beat the Chiefs in the regular season. Of course, famously unable to do so in the postseason. But Chiefs, your defense is phenomenal. I want to say this. There's this term that gets kind of beaten into the ground. Guys are flying everywhere on this defense. And it gets a little overused. There's 3 teams I'm talking about today. They're one of them, of course. These 3 teams fit that definition to a T. Chiefs might be the poster child for it. They're incredible. Defense is incredible. To block that kick and win that game in that fashion. It really is never a doubt, as many people have adopted as the catchphrase for this team. Why would you doubt them? You look silly for doing it. Moving on now. Let's talk about another defense that I have given a ton of credit to all season. But today, I mean, they get their credit. They get their credit. Trust me, hear me out on this one. Yes, they gave up 27 points, but let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. 28-27, and you're talking defense? Yes, because overall, it's still the number one identity of this roster. That locker room feels like a defensive locker room more than anything. I don't care. It just does. That said, we're going to start by giving props to this offense because I don't think they win today with the Justin Fields version of this offense. Listen. Russell Wilson, 50% completion percentage today, sub 200 yards, threw a pick, and 3 touchdowns. They weren't phenomenally like otherworldly touchdowns. They were kind of shorter, like a 3-yard, a 6-yard, maybe an 18-yarder in there. I think. Regardless, I don't think they win today with Fields as the starter because the offensive system was so different with him than it is with Russell Wilson. So yes, he had the pick. Doesn't matter. They're averaging 30 points a game since Russell Wilson took over for them as their starting quarterback. And I don't know that anyone would have predicted that. It's 3 games. 3-game sample size. They'll have a stinker here and there. We'll see what happens against Baltimore next week because you normally think like, oh, Baltimore will end that a little bit right there. 30 points. Baltimore's pass defense is horrible. It's crazy how bad their passing defense is. Rushing defense is phenomenal. We'll see. The Steelers want to run the ball first most of the time. That's also a thing with their identity. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But 30 points a game since Russell Wilson took over this offense. And like I said, he had the pick today, 50%. But you saw Mike Williams make an impact today, the week after he was traded. He continues to find George Pickens for nice chunk plays. Definitely should be silencing him even if he's only getting 4, 5, 6 catches a game. He's a huge target for Russell Wilson. He's loved to find him. And the offense just looks better. All right. Let's talk about the defense. Look what they did to Jayden Daniels today. Look what they did. Jayden Daniels today completed 50% of his passes. That's his worst of the year. Obviously, this being his first year. If I say worst of the year, that means of his whole pro career so far. That's the worst of the year. He had 202 passing yards today. That's his worst since his first start. That's his worst since his first start. I think I kind of butchered those words there. He didn't have a passing or rushing touchdown today. That's the second time all season, the first since week 2. Then take everything into consideration, kind of roll all of these stats into one, you get passer rating. And while I think it is a very flawed stat, high passer rating does almost always legitimately mean good game. Low passer rating does always legitimately mean bad game. They held him to a 68.5 passer rating today. That's the worst of the year for him. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense did that. We knew it was going to be a huge test, and this is no shade to Washington, who once again showed like they can win any kind of game. They're going to be right there. Pittsburgh's doing the same thing, though. I don't know. So like I said, I've swallowed the pills on the Steelers, and I admitted I was wrong about Russ's impact on this offense, albeit we'll talk next week about what they're going to do against the Ravens. We'll see. But do you see why I've been high on them throughout this 7-2 start now? In the moment, I've been very high on them, even if I wasn't the highest on them in the preseason. I happily admitted I was wrong about Russ, but he's bringing a lot of new things to this offense. They look legitimately dangerous. Legitimately dangerous. This defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense, and they are for real starting to look like those teams that won 2 Super Bowls with Big Ben that were just good enough on offense. Very good offenses. Hall of Fame players. They weren't number one offense. They weren't Peyton Manning. They weren't Brady to Moss. You know what I'm saying? This is starting to feel like one of those teams. Not predicting that they're going to win the Super Bowl. Just saying. Starting to feel like one of those teams. Let's talk about one more, and it had been just a bit too long since I've talked about them on this particular show because we don't necessarily get to every game because it's a one-man operation here. Let's talk about a team that I have been fond of all season. A team that continues to pleasantly surprise me. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Listen, again, getting out of the way, Sam Darnold had one of the Sam Darnold games of all time. And they still won. And a nail-biter. Oh my God. Thank you, Minnesota, for proving me right over these last few months where I've said, guys, the offense is fun, the offense is cool, the offense is doing their thing. Their defense is why I have faith in them. Their defense is why I view them as a legitimate contender in the NFC, not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I feel like I should stop qualifying that, by the way. I talk about a lot of teams. I talk positive about a lot of teams because there's a lot of good teams in the league right now. Just because I say they're legitimate or they're a contender doesn't mean I'm picking them to win it all, okay? Can we just get that out of the way? I don't want to have to keep qualifying that. Minnesota continuously doing their thing, continuing to impress me non-stop. They won today just because of the defense. Let's get that very clear. Listen, that's zero shade to their offense, and we'll talk later on about how they were to maintain a good flow to this game, okay? That said, if they were doing that and the defense gives up literally, 15 points, they lose today, right? It's like 15-14 would have lost it today, right? Yeah, 12-7. They won. Look, Darnold had nice empty stats today. Zero shade to them. Their rushing attack carried them in points today. Zero shade to them. It helped set them up for their 4 field goals. Definitely zero shade to their special teams. But man, their star corners, Byron Murphy, Cam Bynum, each had a pick, including a game-sealing one, stopping Jacksonville from going down to win the game. And that is going to be this team's bread and butter. It just is. And as I said, a minute ago that I would talk about this, this was the time of possession game of the century. Oh my God. Jacksonville had the ball for 17 minutes. God. That Minnesota defense, as a result, stayed so fresh. They were able to close out the game, in my opinion, as a result of this. But the offense, of course, did do their part in that as well. You don't have 42 minutes time of possession and some change in there if you're just laying eggs every time you go out there. It's just the fact of the matter that you had a lot of empty Sam Darnold stats that you couldn't convert when you got into Jacksonville territory. That makes me say this is all on the defense. And the defense is their bread and butter. And the defense is why I believe in the Minnesota Vikings going down the stretch. I think the defense is going to continue to keep them in every single game. I do. I'll be shocked if they lose a game by more than 10 all season. So, when you talk about the Vikings, you're talking about a 2-point loss to the Lions, and it's like, okay. And the Thursday night loss to the Rams. Weird game. I predicted the Rams to win that game. This next little stretch here is Titans, Bears, Cardinals, Falcons. Falcons are letting me down. Cardinals are looking good, though, so, it's give and take. Could go on a real stretch here. Oh, and then they have the Bears again right after that. This Viking team is going to be right there until the very end. Their last 2 games of the season are Packers-Lions. Starting to look like, 12-5 at worst, right? That's how it's starting to feel if they stay healthy. I'm so pleasantly surprised by them. I'm very thoroughly enjoying watching them. And I'm so fond of the way that this team plays defense. it's just a great defense. Bottom line, Brian Flores is a wizard of a defensive coordinator with what he's done with this group. All right. Kind of a different episode of The Alt. If you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate it. I love you. This does wrap it up, but I want to, preface it. I said last week on Thursday's episode, before I didn't do a Friday episode, by the way, we're going to change the formatting some. I don't know entirely what that looks like yet. It could be literally episode to episode. But some episodes will just be one segment, hyper-focused, because that seems to be what people are enjoying the most. So Monday, I don't see changing too much more than it did here. Like, there's no 5 and 5, where I give you the 5 takes in 5 minutes. I could bring that back, though. If you're an everyday listener, a day one listener, and you're like, oh, I like the old format better, let me know. I'm open to it. I'm just trying to change it based off of the feedback I'm getting from the data that YouTube gives me on the episodes. So with that said, that does wrap up this episode. If you made it this far, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I don't take you for granted. Please check and see if you're subscribed. If you're not, click the little button. It means a ton to me. I hope you enjoyed this week of football. I hope you enjoyed this upcoming week of the Alt, leading up into week 11, which has a couple of really, really good matchups. Bills, Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, just to name a few. Commanders, Eagles, Thursday night. Whew, we are cooking with gas this week. I'm excited to talk about it with you. But that is it for now. I will see you back here, bright and early, tomorrow.